and tonight's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little more serious, but I have gotten a lot of requests to do this video, so I am pretty much going to share my story about my spinal cord injury and how everything happened, and just how everything's been. So I'm just going to jump right into it. In mid-August, that's when everything started. Back in 2008, I developed a ingrown hair under my right arm, and it grew into about a 5-inch mass, and it got so painful that it was very hard to do a lot of the things that I needed to do. I was a nanny at the time for a 3-year-old little boy and a 6-year-old little girl, and I was constantly on the go, so it was really difficult to do a lot of the things that I needed to do because it was so painful. And it got to the point where it was so painful that I couldn't even put my arm down. So I decided to go to the emergency room, and they cultured it, drained and packed it and everything. I know it's kind of gross, but I'm just telling you like it is. And they put me on antibiotics, and I found out that the ingrown hair had turned into MRSA. And if you guys don't know what MRSA is, it is the worst type of staph infection that you can get. You can live for years and decades with HIV, AIDS, cancer. You literally could live for hours with MRSA, and it's not an exaggeration, it's the truth. And so when they put me on antibiotics, they did not put me on the correct type of antibiotics. And the hard thing is that I didn't know this at all. I didn't really know anything about MRSA. And so it was really a very new territory for me to be in. But the MRSA virus can only be killed by 2 antibiotics. One is a pill version, and one is an IV version. And the antibiotic that they put me on was for UTIs and sinus infections. So the MRSA virus went bloodstream and then went into my spine. So, but after about a week and a half, I felt fine. Then September 9th, 2008, I remember the exact day, I actually had a gynecologist appointment, which I know, again, it's a little gross, but I was driving home, and my back really was very tight and very sore. And I thought, okay, maybe it's just because I was laying on the table for a long time, or I had slept wrong the night before. So I really didn't, chalk it up to anything too big. I was just like, all right, it'll go away, within the next few days. And over the next few days, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, about September 16th or the 17th, I told Kyle that I needed to go to the emergency room because I couldn't function whatsoever. I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I couldn't lay down, I couldn't do really anything without being in immense amounts of pain. So we went to the emergency room, and they did an x-ray, they didn't see anything, and they pretty much just chalked it up to, okay, maybe you sprained your back, and here's some 800 milligram ibuprofen, go home, you'll be fine. Pretty much that was like giving a band-aid to an amputee. It didn't do anything. So I called my family doctor, and I had told him, listen, something's wrong with my back. So I went to his office, and he prescribed me some stronger pain medication. That didn't work. Went back about a couple weeks later, said the same thing, that it really hurt. Still gave me another stronger pain medication. That didn't work. So finally I just said, screw it, I'm just gonna have to deal with it, hopefully it'll go away. So I carried on with my life, even though I was not sleeping, I wasn't functioning, I just still had a life to live, and so I just carried on. And I actually, very beginning of October of 2008, I actually got another job at a hotel in Ann Arbor, working as a waitress, and my shifts were from 5:30 in the morning until anywhere between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. Then I had to rush home, grab my 6-year-old off of the bus when she got home from school, take care of them until the end of the night, go to bed, get up at 4:30 in the morning. And I did that for about 2 weeks, and just trying to disregard the back pain. It literally was getting so bad that I don't even, honestly, I don't even remember how I even functioned for those like 2 weeks. So finally, October 12th, 2008, I went to work in the morning, and about 2 hours into my shift, I couldn't see straight, I couldn't walk, I couldn't move. So my boss sent me home, and I went home, went back to bed for a little bit, got up around about 1:30 in the afternoon, and I finally told Kyle, listen, I'm going to U of M, which is the hospital in Ann Arbor. It's the University of Michigan Hospital, because I had gone to St. Joe's before, and obviously they didn't do anything for me. So I just told Kyle, I'm going to St. Joe's, or I'm going to U of M, and I'm not going to leave until they tell me what's wrong with me. So we drove to U of M, and they did a bunch of tests, and finally, first they thought it was pneumonia, and then they ruled that out really quickly. And then they did a CAT scan and an x-ray, and they found a 2-centimeter mass on my T5, which I'll insert a picture of your spine and I'll point to where your T5 is. It's pretty much right in the middle of your back. So they admitted me, and pretty much just told me, we're just going to try to figure out what's wrong with you. So the next day, they admitted me into the Mott's Hospital, which is actually the children's hospital, because they didn't have any other beds available in the entire hospital. And so I was 23 years old when all of this happened. I'm 28 now. And at first, after they ruled out a pneumonia, they thought it could possibly be cancer. So I had to meet with the oncologist. I had to meet with their entire team and pretty much prepare myself that I had cancer in my spine. So we had to wait over 24 hours for the results, which was probably the worst 24 hours of our lives at that point, or up until that point. And when they finally did they did 100 different types of tests on me, and they finally did a biopsy of my spine, and they found out that it was MRSA. So they put me on very heavy doses of antibiotics through IV. I was on pain medication, and finally, towards the 14th of October, I was finally starting to feel decent. It was the first time I had not been in pain for over a month and a half, and I was just thankful that I just wasn't in immense amounts of pain. So they put me on I was on 2,000 milligrams of IV antibiotics 3 times a day, and various type of other medications through IV. And so on October 15th, which was a Wednesday, they came into my room, my team and my doctors and nurses, everybody came into my room and said that everything was actually starting to look good, and that I would be able to possibly go home Friday or Saturday. So I was like, great, you know, things are going to be fine. They're going to get rid of it, and I can go on with my life and be fine. So pretty much we just kind of hung out in the hospital room, really. What was nice is that I had my own hospital room the entire time I was there, so that was kind of nice. And Kyle pretty much moved in with me to the hospital. We were already living together, but he moved in with me practically when I went into the hospital, so that was really nice to have that support and him being there. And he's just been phenomenal ever since, and I just don't know what I would do without him if he wasn't there with me throughout this entire experience. So October 16th, which was a Thursday, we woke up, had breakfast, and I went on Facebook and MySpace when MySpace was still actually, you know, somewhat popular, and kind of just updated everybody on what was going on, and saying that, you know, we would be able to get to go home in a few days, so it was great. And probably around 10:30 in the morning, my right leg started to go a little bit numb. And I figured, all right, I've been in bed for 4 days. I need to get up and move around. So we went for a walk around the unit that I was on, and my right leg kept buckling underneath of me, which I thought was really strange, and I couldn't really put a lot of weight on it. So as we were coming around the corner to go back to my room, my mom came off the elevator, and she was like, "Why are you walking so funny?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's been going on for about an hour now." So she's like, "Well, you know, go take a shower. Maybe the hot water will help, you know, with your circulation." So I did, and I was in the shower for about 5 minutes, and I was leaning up against the back wall, and I kept going like this. I know you guys can see my messy kitchen behind me. I've been baking all day, so pardon that, or forgive that. So pretty much my right leg just kept going, like it just wasn't working. So I was yelling for Kyle and to help me, because by the time I got out of the shower, I was in the shower for about 5 minutes, and I could not move. I couldn't walk. So I was screaming for Kyle, and he came in and helped me get out of the shower. We called my doctors, and we said, all right, something's not right here. So we called my doctors and said that, you know, something's wrong, and it's just needs to be addressed immediately. So pretty much what had happened is when they did my biopsy, it was like taking a water balloon and sticking a needle through it. And so pretty much what had happened is the mass had started to leak and it started to grow, which pretty much was now from 2 inches or 2 centimeters, it was over 4 inches long, and it was so inflamed that it had actually wrapped around my spinal cord, and that was what was causing paralysis very, very rapidly. So they took me down to do yet another test, which was called a myelogram test, and what they did is they injected dye into my back to see what was, where the blockage was. And about a third of the way through the test, they saw that the dye had got blocked, and they needed to finish the test, so they had to go in through the side of my neck. Which, when you see a needle about that big, I don't know if you guys can see that pretty well, it's about that big, and they said they're going to put that in my neck. I pretty much freaked the hell out. I pretty much was like, okay, you guys are going to put me under, I'm not going to be awake for any of this, and they're like, we can't do that. So I pretty much just had to grin and bear it. One of the scariest moments in my entire life. So I had been down at that test for a few hours, and Kyle and my mom were starting to freak out because I had been gone for so long. So my mom had gotten a hold of one of the nurses, and actually the nurse said that I was already in surgery, and pretty much they flipped out. So we got the doctors, and I was actually in down in surgery prep. And so they came down, and they pretty much just said, all right, we're gonna have to do emergency surgery on you to get this out of your spine. We didn't know how long it was gonna be. We didn't know, really, they didn't even know a lot of what was gonna happen until they actually got into my back. So at that point in the day, I had been up since about 7:30. This is now about 10 o'clock at night, and I was so tired, and just the 2 things I remember the most, honestly, and this might sound really, really funny, is I just said I had to pee so bad because I couldn't stand up. So I couldn't go to the bathroom regularly. So I had a pretty big bladder, so I could hold, I always said I had those bladder the size of a watermelon. But I just said, you know what, just put me to sleep and put a catheter in me so I can pee. That was my 2 biggest things. So, and my biggest thing also too was that I wanted to make sure that I was totally under anesthesia before they put me on the operating table, because I was in so much pain. So, about 10:30 at night, I went into surgery, and, you know, they just said count back from 10, and then I got to about for 8, and I was out. That night was still the longest night of Kyle and my mom's lives. I had to have 10 hours for emergency surgery, and pretty much it was really, really hard for my mom and Kyle to pretty much just sit there and wait. So finally, at about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, they came out and they said that surgery went well, and pretty much when they went into my spine, the infection was the consistency of half-cooked pie dough. And all they could do was scrape the infection away around my spine. It pretty much, like I said, it was about 4 inches, and it had wrapped around my spinal cord. and that's what was causing paralysis. So all they could really do was go in, scrape off as much of the infection as they could, and pretty much sew me up. And I'll put a picture in what my spine looked like what my back looked like after my surgery. And if you guys have a little bit of queasy stomachs, you might want to fast forward just a smidge to what after that picture. So the doctor said it's going to be a waiting game, and whatever she gets back, we're just going to have to wait and see. So that was October 17th. I was in the ICU for 2 days, October 17th and the 18th, and what I remember from being in the ICU is not much. I remember my older sister came in to sit with me for the day because my mom and Kyle hadn't gotten any sleep that night, so she came in to sit with me for the day, and I just remember sleeping a lot, and I couldn't feed myself because I was so weak from surgery, so I had to have people feed me. I remember when I woke up, I had IVs and tubes and just things coming out of places I didn't think that they could go, pretty much. I looked down at my feet, and I actually had an IV coming out of my foot. And I asked, why is there an IV coming out of my foot? And they said, we ran out of places to put an IV. So it was either that or the temples in your head. And I'm like, I have 2 feet, use them both, please. Like, leave my head alone. Like, my neck, I already had a huge bruise on the side of my neck from the myelogram test. And I was like, just do what you need to do, just stay away from my head. So I also remember, and I'll have to try to dig it out and take a picture of it, one of my mom's friends, I couldn't have flowers in the ICU, so they made a poster of a vase with 3 flowers in it, and I actually still have it. And anytime somebody came to visit me, or I had nurses that I really liked, they would draw a flower and write their name and like maybe a little message. And so I actually have, and I'm actually going to get this framed to put in the house when we move in December. But I'll try to find it and post a picture in this video, which I still is probably one of my most treasured possessions from that time of my life. So I was stable enough to get out of the ICU on October 19th. They switched me to the main floor, and I was there until Halloween, and then I got transferred up to the rehab unit on Halloween. And so the time from the October 19th to October 31st, I was on the main floor, and really it was, doctors came in every day to, see if there was any change. There really wasn't. They did a lot of testing to see if I could have any feeling or sensation below my level of injury, which, how I describe it is, when I came out of surgery, you could have ran me over with an 18-wheeler Mack truck and I wouldn't have felt a thing. I couldn't move, I couldn't feel anything, and pretty much what I've always said is, from boobs up, I'm great, boobs down, I'm bad, because that's kind of the easiest way to describe where my level of injury is. It's right under my breasts, which is right around which is T5, T6, which, if you looked at the picture of the spine that I put in the video, you'll kind of know where that's at. I had therapists come in to try to get me to move and, feel and everything like that. So not really a lot happened between the time that I came out of the ICU until the time I went up on the rehab unit. On Halloween, I had, after my surgery, and I'm going to post a picture, like I said, of my spine, or of my back. I had 32 sutures down my back, and I actually spent my entire recovery on my back, which a lot of people think is kind of weird, that because I had such heavy back surgery that I wouldn't be able to be on my back for my recovery, which I was. Also too, I have no foreign objects in my back, which is great. I have no pins or rods or screws or anything like that. It is all still intact. My T5 and T6 is definitely deteriorated to a certain extent. I possibly could have to have my spine fused sometime in the future. Right now, it's looking pretty good, which is great. Thumbs up for that. So about a week before I went into the rehab unit, they had been trying to get me to sit up on my edge of my bed by myself. So we were working on that, and they had told my mom and Kyle that whenever they were there to stimulate my feet or my legs and try to get them to move. So what they would do is they would tickle the bottom of my feet like this, and my toes would curl, which was a great sign because it meant that my brain was sending signals to my feet to get to move pretty much. So when I went up to the rehab unit, we had met with my doctors and my nurses and my new rehab staff, and they pretty much just kind of went over what they were going to try to do. So for about, I think, maybe wasn't it like a week or two that they came to my room to do therapy before they sent me down to the actual therapist unit? Yeah. It was about a week or two that they would come up every day. They would come up twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, to work on therapy in my hospital room before they actually sent me down to the rehab unit. So we did that, and we would try to, you know, have me move my legs so my feet would go like this. So they would call it windshield wipers. Sorry, my hair is like obnoxious today. So we were doing that, then we were trying to do other things to get my strength up, to be able to use a wheelchair for the first time. So on October 31st, they pretty much, for the week before that, they were trying to get me into the rehab unit so I could start rehab, but they didn't have any beds available. So October 31st, Halloween, which I was really bummed because I didn't get to carve any pumpkins or anything like that, which I was kind of bummed about, but I couldn't even sit up by myself, so obviously there was no way that I could even do anything like that. They took my sutures out on Halloween, which I was dreading horribly. Kyle had to work that day, so I kept calling him and I kept telling the nurses, okay, I want to wait until Kyle gets here so he can be here to kind of, you know, keep me calm through all of this. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get out of work before they had to transfer me up, so they took my sutures out, which it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It hurt, definitely, and I could feel that, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, so that was good. So, and then also too, I had heard a lot of really bad things about the rehab unit. I heard that the nurses were really tough, and they were like the nurses from hell, and, you know, they pretty much called that the hell unit, and I was just like, great, I don't want to leave. Like, I loved my nurses on the main floor, and I'm like, I don't want to leave you guys, because they were really nice and supportive, and you know, really kind of kept everything lighthearted for me, which was great. So I was very much dreading going to the rehab unit. So I went up there and I met my head nurse, which her name is Casey, and automatically we hit it off right off from the very beginning, which was great. We became very close. We became very good friends. We're still actually very good friends. Every time I'm at the hospital for a appointment, I always try, if I have a little extra time, I always try to go up to the rehab unit and say hi to all my nurses, and then I go down to the therapist unit and or the therapy unit and go see all my therapists and stuff. So I still keep in touch with everybody, which is really nice, and I've met so many great people throughout this experience I never would have met if this hadn't happened. So when I was on the rehab unit, they pretty much started me with being able to sit up on my own, which they kind of started, I'm sorry, my nose itches so bad. They kind of started when I was on the main floor. They would have me try to sit up at the edge of my bed, and I couldn't do it. I mean, literally all my core muscles were completely gone. I had to have somebody sit behind me because I would just fall over. So for about 2 weeks after I went up to the rehab unit, they would come to my therapist would come to my room once in the morning, once in the afternoon, to work on therapy in my room before they sent me down to the actual rehab unit on the first floor. So pretty much we would work on strengthening for my arms so I would be able to use a wheelchair for the first time and have the endurance and the strength to do it. They would also try to help me, you know, move my legs, move my feet. They would always go like this to do windshield wipers to try to get my feet to move in and out and to get some kind of movement. And I did have, you know, they turned me on my side every, you know, so often, and I had these compression things that I had to wear on my feet on my legs at night that would help with circulation, which I actually loved. A lot of people said they hated them. I actually loved them. It felt really good. And pretty much it was just like these air things that would kind of massage your legs to work with circulation, which felt phenomenal. I also had to wear these boots. I remember they, from my toes to my knee, to help my feet at night stay like this so they wouldn't point, because if my feet pointed, then I wouldn't be able to walk. So I would constantly have to wear these boots at night, and they had like kickstands on them so I could keep them like straight and keep my feet like arched, I guess you could say. So there was just a lot of stuff. I mean, I was still on really heavy antibiotics, pain medication. I had to get a PICC line, which, if you guys don't know what a PICC line is, it's more of a permanent, long-standing IV where right here in my arm, they put a PICC line in, and what it is it's like a tube, a really thin tube that was about, I think, 42 centimeters long, so it went from my arm almost to my heart, and they had to suture it in place, and I had 2 lines for IV, and I had to get IVs in the morning for antibiotics, and in the evening I had to do 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night. It took 2 hours to get all my IV in, or all my medication in through my IV. So by 8 o'clock in the morning I would be able to have breakfast and go down to the rehab unit, and then at 6 o'clock at night, when I was done with therapy pretty much, I went to therapy for about 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and they wanted me to do some Saturday and Sunday therapy, and going 4 or 5 hours a day for therapy, intense therapy, you pretty much just want to relax on the weekends. So my doctor said that was fine. It wasn't going to harm my recovery, so I was able to enjoy my weekends, and pretty much all the holiday specials were going on at this point because it was mid-November. And I had friends and family come up always on the weekends, and Kyle, again, literally lived with me at the hospital, which was amazing. I was really glad that they never gave him any sort of a problem staying with me, and visiting hours, they never did anything with that. So, sorry, Watson's like going crazy. So once I went down to the rehab unit, and I'll post pictures too throughout this video to kind of show you pictures of while I was in the hospital, so you guys can kind of see what it was like. And we worked on strengthening, we worked on really a lot of upper body, because I was going to have to use my upper body a lot more now because my legs obviously didn't work. But we worked on strengthening, we worked on muscles, we worked on toning, we worked on strengthening, we worked on pretty much everything. And I had to literally relearn how to do everything from sitting up to putting clothes on to pretty much everything you have to learn as a child. Except for eating, speaking, and anything upper body. So, I mean, I could wash my hair, or, you know, I could do all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, I had to learn how to take a shower, I had to learn how to sit up, I had to learn how to try to put shoes and socks on, which was a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie about that one. Get in and out of cars, literally everything. So it was really, really tough. On November 3rd, it was probably one of the best days that I was in the hospital, because I was sitting there eating breakfast, and the doctors and nurses had always told me to, whenever I was sitting, or whenever I was like laying in bed, to always try to wiggle my toes, to move my legs, to move my feet, that kind of stuff. So just to try to get my brain to kind of line up again with the rest of my body. So I was sitting there eating breakfast, and I think Kyle was taking a shower or went to go get something, or I don't know, I can't remember, but I was the only one in the room. And I was looking down at my feet, and it's like pretty much all I would ever do is just constantly be like, okay, move. Just move, darn it. And I remember my big toe on my left foot went like this. And at first I was like, okay, wait, was that a spasm, or was that like real? So I did it again, and then I did it again, and it moved when my brain told it to move. So I literally freaked out with excitement. I was like hitting my call button like constantly, like on my little remote thing on my bed, to get my nurses to come in, and I was like trying to call my mom, and I was trying to call Kyle, and I was I was just flipping out. So my nurses come in like running in. They're like, oh my God, what's wrong? And I'm like, I can move my toe. It was absolutely amazing. And I called, I mean, it's like, you would have thought I just like walked on water at that point. It was the first big sign that, okay, I can actually regain function and movement and sensation and feeling and all that. So that was pretty amazing. I was really, really excited about that part. So for about 2 weeks after I went up to the rehab unit, they would come to my therapist would come to my room once in the morning, once in the afternoon to work on therapy in my room before they sent me down to the actual rehab unit on the first floor. So pretty much we would work on strengthening for my arms so I would be able to use a wheelchair for the first time and have the endurance and the strength to do it. They would also try to help me, you know, move my legs, move my feet. They would always go like this to do windshield wipers to try to get my feet to move in and out and to get some kind of movement. And I did have, you know, they turned me on my side every, you know, so often, and I had these compression things that I had to wear on my feet on my legs at night that would help with circulation, which I actually loved. A lot of people said they hated them. I actually loved them. It felt really good. And pretty much it was just like these air things that would kind of massage your legs to work with circulation, which felt phenomenal. I also had to wear these boots. I remember they, from my toes to my knee, to help my feet at night stay like this so they wouldn't point, because if my feet pointed then I wouldn't be able to walk. So I would constantly have to wear these boots at night, and they had like kickstands on them so I could keep them like straight and keep my feet like arched, I guess you could say. So there was just a lot of stuff. I mean, I was still on really heavy antibiotics, pain medication. I had to get a PICC line, which, if you guys don't know what a PICC line is, it's more of a permanent, long-standing IV where right here in my arm, they put a PICC line in, and what it is it's like a tube, a really thin tube that was about, I think, 42 centimeters long, so it went from my arm almost to my heart, and they had to suture it in place, and I had 2 lines for IV, and I had to get IVs in the morning for antibiotics and in the evening. I had to do 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night. It took 2 hours to get all my IV in, or all my medication in through my IV. So by 8 o'clock in the morning, I would be able to have breakfast and go down to the rehab unit. And then at 6 o'clock at night, when I was done with therapy pretty much, I went to therapy for about 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And they wanted me to do some Saturday and Sunday therapy, and going 4 or 5 hours a day for therapy, intense therapy, you pretty much just want to relax on the weekends. So my doctor said that was fine. It wasn't going to harm my recovery, so I was able to enjoy my weekends, and pretty much all the holiday specials were going on at this point because it was mid-November. And I had friends and family come up always on the weekends, and Kyle, again, literally lived with me at the hospital, which was amazing. I was really glad that they never gave him any sort of a problem staying with me, and visiting hours, they never did anything with that. So, sorry, Watson's like going crazy. So once I went down to the rehab unit, and I'll post pictures too throughout this video to kind of show you pictures of while I was in the hospital, so you guys can kind of see what it was like. And we worked on strengthening, we worked on really a lot of upper body, because I was going to have to use my upper body a lot more now because my legs obviously didn't work. But we worked on strengthening, we worked on muscles, we worked on toning, we worked on strengthening, we worked on pretty much everything. And I had to literally relearn how to do everything from sitting up to putting clothes on to pretty much everything you have to learn as a child. Except for eating, speaking, and anything upper body. So I mean, I could wash my hair, or you know, I could do all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I had to learn how to take a shower, I had to learn how to sit up, I had to learn how to try to put shoes and socks on, which was a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie about that one. Get in and out of cars, literally everything. So it was really, really tough. But the one thing I think that saved me in the hospital was a guy named Devin. Devin was my occupational therapeutic therapist, and his job was to reintroduce me into the world of fun from a wheelchair. So everything that I was interested in doing before I was in a wheelchair, he would now teach me how to do from a wheelchair. So cooking obviously was my very first one, and it was great because he was also a chef, and he and his partner owned a bakery in Chicago, so we automatically hit it off. And Kyle's birthday was coming around, and so I really wanted to make him a special dinner. When I first got injured and after I got out of surgery, my team told me that I would be discharged December 4th, which is Kyle's birthday. And even before we knew the discharge date, we said we want to be home by Kyle's birthday. And, you know, throughout this whole experience being in the hospital, I was in the hospital for 68 days. And I remember about a week after I had surgery, I had kept telling myself, okay, I just had back surgery, I'm going to be in the hospital for 3-4 weeks, do some therapy, and I'll be able to walk out of here. About a week after my surgery, I realized that's not going to happen. And I remember crying that entire day. Just your whole world comes to a screeching halt when you go through something like this, and you really have to take a step back and look at what's important, what your priorities are, and kind of prioritize your life in a completely different way. I really remember just bawling my eyes out that entire day because I realized that I'm probably never going to walk again. But 5 years later, I'm happy to say that I can walk. I can't walk normally, but I can walk short distances with a walker, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But going back to therapy and being on the rehab unit and everything, it was really nice. Most of my nurses were great. I remember I had 2 nurses that I hated, and after one night each, I told them that I don't want to see you in my room anymore. If you come in my room, I will scream bloody murder, yada 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 yada. So, didn't really see them again. I have seen them since, which I think is kind of funny, but, you know who you like, you know who you don't like. I mean, you're going through something that traumatic, you don't want to, deal with stupid people. So, that was that. So, with Thanksgiving and everything coming up, I really did not want to spend Thanksgiving in the hospital, so they allowed me to have a day pass so I could go home for Thanksgiving, which was awesome. But the day before Thanksgiving, they came into my room and they told me that unfortunately I was not going to be discharged on December 4th, which was only, a week away, that they were going to push my discharge date back 2 weeks, and it was now December 18th. And that day was probably the hardest day of my life. I cried even harder than the day that I realized I wasn't going to walk again. I was literally hysterical, and I told my doctors, if you keep me one day past the 18th, I don't care where I am at in my recovery, I will check myself out of this hospital because I am not spending Christmas in a hospital. I had been there for 2 months. I just said, you know what, I don't care what the hell you all say, I'm going home. So, yeah, that was really hard. But I got to go home for Thanksgiving, which was great, but it kind of sucked knowing that I had to go back to the hospital the night, later that night. But it was still nice going home and seeing my family and, getting some sense of normalcy back. So, more towards, towards Kyle's birthday, which is December 4th, as I said, Devin and I created a little plan that I was going to make him a 3-course meal and a birthday cake, and I will post pictures in the video of what Kyle's birthday cake looked like. And he helped me, and it took us, Devin helped me, not Kyle. Kyle actually didn't know anything about it, which was great because we really surprised him, which was awesome. And like I said, I'll post pictures in the video so you guys can see. And it was just an awesome day. I was super excited that I finally got to give him a good surprise, so that was awesome. So pretty much we just worked on therapy after that, and really buckled down to try to get me out by the 18th. It was awesome because I got to like go out and go grocery shopping, and I got to go to Applebee's, and really started to try to introduce me into the world again from a wheelchair, which to me, I didn't really give a shit. Honestly, I just was happy to get out of that darn hospital for just even a little bit amount of time and be normal again and just be my happy, bubbly self. And I was so grateful that I got a chance to do that. So December 18th was coming closer and closer and closer, which I was just literally counting down the days. I had the days counted down on like my little whiteboard, and I was like counting down the hours, truly. And it was just an amazing time because I was just getting really, really excited, and I was also getting super excited because Kyle and I would be moving into our own home together. We weren't going to be living with anybody else, just the two of us, and that was a really, really special time in our lives. So finally December 18th came, and I was able to go home, and I didn't have to go home with any IV or anything like that. I was just on we had switched me all over to pill medication, and it was probably one of the happiest days ever. I was just so excited to get home and get into our new apartment and just get back to normal. So it was a week before Christmas, and we literally had practically nothing. We had, my dad and my stepmom had bought us a living room set for our Christmas / birthday, my birthday present and Kyle's birthday presents, which was great because we didn't have anything. We had like a kitchen table, a desk, a bookshelf, a TV, and that literally was pretty much it. It was slim pickings. So that year for Christmas was probably my most memorable Christmas because my sister's school, she works in Georgia, she's a school teacher, they had found out about my injury, and they had put together a donation for my sister to come home, when my sister came home, to buy me, or to buy myself and Kyle things for the house, and our church pitched in, and so we took like 3 hours to open Christmas presents that year because it was there was just so much that we had to open, and it was, you feel so humbled and blessed, and when people you have never met, you probably never will meet, take money out of their hard-earned paychecks to help out and to, you know, make your lives easier after we had been through something this traumatic. So, you know, fast forward 5 years later, and I'm going to put together like a little photo montage at the end of this video if you guys would like to check out some pictures from the time I was in the hospital till now. So if you guys want to check that out at the very end, that'll be up there. But fast forward 5 years, and our lives have completely been turned around and upside down, the good and the bad, and you know, we're very blessed to say that we have made it 5 years out together, and that we're still together. We're still very happy, and you know, it's just really, words can't describe how my life has changed, or our lives have changed. So, you know, it's just been a whirlwind experience, and I also wanted to take a minute to thank all of my subscribers who write to me, who comment, who, you know, thumbs up my videos, who, you know, talk to me on Facebook, or, you know, other friends that I've become really good friends with on YouTube, and other YouTubers, and I just want to thank you guys all so much for your continued support and all of your wonderful comments. Every time I see a new comment, I get so excited, and every time I see a new subscriber, I get so thrilled that you guys would take time out of your busy days to sit down and watch, you know, me do whatever it is I'm doing. So I just want to thank you guys all, each and every one of you, so much. And, you know, I never thought that I would have 20 subscribers, let alone 180. To everyone that has promoted my channel on your channel, I want to thank you as well. You know, I've gotten a lot more subscribers because of you guys, so thank you to, you know, Ashley and Jamie and Marnie, and you know, everyone else who has, Nancy Holmes, to Becca Hoff, or Joff, sorry if I'm getting that wrong, Becca. You know, everyone who has promoted me on their channels, thank you guys so much. You guys are so, so sweet whenever you guys talk about me. I love you guys to death. You guys are truly my friends. I really do think of you as my friends, not just subscribers. And, you know, it's just been a fantastic journey, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next 5 years, and hopefully you guys will be there to come along for the ride. So I know this was a super, super long video, but if you guys have made it through to the end, you know, leave a comment saying, you know, I made it and I watched it and I liked it, or, you know, whatever you guys want to put on there, that's fine. Even if it's like a smiley face, it doesn't matter to me. So, without further ado, I'll let you guys look through some of the pictures, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Love you guys. Bye!